Hi there, everybody. Happy Monday. Welcome back to another episode of Learn with Flo. I'm really excited to kick off a new month together, which means we have a new theme that we get to roll through. If you missed any of our theme from January, definitely go back and hit up those episodes because it was a 4-part episode series where we really kicked off 2025 with a bang to talk about the ins and outs, peel back the veil and the mystery behind these two different medical models that we all have access to today in 2025, which is super exciting, but also for some people can feel incredibly confusing and a little bit overwhelming. So I spent the entire month of January really piecing apart the differences between more of our conventional moving from a dying to surviving model and what they can offer for us, as well as the differences of individuals looking for more of a surviving to thriving model that more of a functional or alternative medicine headspace can offer us. It's not a competition, it's a collaboration, and both of them can be very, very successful. And I think, like I said, a lot of times people are kind of looking for one thing, but they're using a completely different model, so they're feeling frustrated and dismissed. And I think that similar theme I have definitely seen in a very specific space around a topic that I know a lot of us are struggling with, and it's what I want to dive into this month of February, and that is all things autoimmune disease. I see a lot of individuals that are either in the midst of looking for some sort of autoimmune disease diagnosis, or they have a lot of different symptoms that they haven't really gotten a whole lot of answer or clarity for. So whether you personally are someone that has struggled with autoimmune patterns, or you know somebody who has, it wouldn't surprise me because the prevalence of autoimmune disease is skyrocketing in the country. So I really want to take today's conversation and make it the first of kind of our month-long series here in February, talking about the mysteries behind the growing epidemic of autoimmune disease, as well as dispel a lot of myths that we're hearing out there as well too. And I want to be able to really come in and kind of give a more alternative perspective to autoimmune disease than maybe what we've been conditioned to hear or to think of before. A lot of individuals kind of come in thinking like, oh, my autoimmune disease, it's genetic, or it's kind of a forever label that they're going to always wear. And there's not something that is really at the root of it, right? Those are some of the conditioned things that we hear about. And so we're going to get a chance to really talk about the truths, as well as maybe some of the alternative viewpoints of autoimmune disease in today's conversation, as well as this whole month-long series. So unfortunately, I wish I could say that autoimmune disease is rare, but in today's world, we're actually seeing autoimmune patterns as one of the leading causes of chronic disease worldwide, which is pretty shocking. It does affect more than right now. I mean, these are just people that have been diagnosed, right? It estimates to affect more than 50 million Americans alone. That is more than cancer and heart disease combined, just to kind of put that into perspective. Autoimmune diseases, there's plenty of them. So if you've heard a lot of the different terms of Hashimoto's, Graves' disease, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, myasthenia gravis, there's a million, Crohn's disease, right? It's like there are many and many different autoimmune patterns that kind of fall under this umbrella. And although they're becoming way more commonly diagnosed, I would say, there's a big misunderstanding and a lot of dismissal around autoimmune diseases. So just to throw some fun facts out there for us, like I said, not only does this affect autoimmune diseases, that is, affect more than the heart disease and cancer prevalence worldwide combined together, we're also seeing on average some pretty disappointing statistics in more of the fields around autoimmune disease, because it is taking approximately right now, they say 4.6 years and visits to about 5 different providers in order to even get a proper diagnosis for autoimmune disease. So that is a wild journey that these people are going through. And women are disproportionately affected. There's about 80% of autoimmune cases are women. So this is just kind of like the things that start to really spur me as I'm thinking about it from more of a functional and alternative angle is like, this is shocking, right? And what's even more shocking is that the incidence of autoimmune disease is rising dramatically. Some experts are estimating that cases have increased more than 300% in the last few decades. that is a wild trajectory, right? So it's like, how can we kind of explain that, right? It's like, what is happening? There's more than 100 different autoimmune diseases that have been identified, but conventional medicine kind of tends to treat them as very separate conditions, as you can imagine, because we talked about that last month of just the overall model of conventional medicine being very much into specialty positions, right? And it's like you see your neurologist, your gastroenterologist, your endocrinologist, your gynecologist, they're all very separate and they all separate the human body into multiple different parts and pieces. So that's really kind of what happens in more of an autoimmune disease perspective too. They might actually receive an autoimmune disease diagnosis from a rheumatologist, right? But before then, they've already maybe seen their primary care provider who referred them to a rheumatologist who then, depending on the diagnosis of autoimmune disease, they probably then refer you out to another specialist based off of how the autoimmune disease is presenting in your body. So if you got a diagnosis of Crohn's disease and it's impacting your gut, then the rheumatologist then refers you to a gastroenterologist, right? And like pretty soon it's like, oh my goodness, like where did all of this kind of start to happen? How can we trace this back? And so because of this, it starts to kind of lead you to believe that the best bet for autoimmune patterns is really just suppressing your symptoms, honestly, usually with steroids or immunosuppressant medications. And I think the one big thing that a lot of more of the conventional medicine fails to let people in on is the fact that autoimmune disease is something that you can put into remission. It is not something that's a lifelong diagnosis. Genetics can be part of setting the stage, but what we're learning more and more about autoimmune patterns, like I said, this doesn't just explode in prevalency up to 300% because of like no explanation or rhyme or reason, right? And so a lot of times meeting it from a more functional or alternative perspective may be the first time that somebody ever hears the hopeful, I guess you could say the hopeful sentiment of knowing that autoimmune patterns are something that we are understanding them more at a deeper perspective of where they're coming from, how they're developing in the body, and also that it's not just splitting you off into different parts and pieces, but we want to start to ask why. Why is the body doing this? What's at the heart of autoimmune disease patterns, regardless of how it's presenting in your body? A lot of commonalities exist with all autoimmune patterns. So we can say, oh my gosh, there's 150 different types of autoimmune disease, but really there's common thread to all of them. It just differs in how it manifests from each person to the next. So if you kind of think about, you're like, okay, Lauryn, you're kind of out there a little bit talking about the fact that autoimmune disease can be put into remission, and that's not something that you're really hearing from a conventional medicine standpoint. So like, how do you do that, right? And that's exactly what we're going to be diving into with our series and our time together. So I kind of want to walk through more of the functional medicine mindset and approach to autoimmunity, because as we look deeper, we'll start to uncover some of the real triggers behind these autoimmune patterns. And I really want to bring it back to understanding how are we using a whole body approach, because this is an immune system that is out of balance, an immune system that is very hypervigilant and it is feeling triggered by certain factors coming within the body, right? So we're going to really talk about why autoimmune disease happens in the first place. We're going to talk about things like what's actually driving these autoimmune symptoms and flares, and what are some of the key areas that maybe even more of a conventional medicine standpoint isn't addressing for that possibility of remission. So let's just start with the basics, because I think that this is going to even take a completely different approach than a lot of us hear about in more of our maybe conditioned medical model or healthcare model. And so let's start with just defining some terms. What exactly is autoimmune disease? Again, you're probably going to hear two different kind of definitions of that. And I want to share, like I said, meeting on the same page, at least at first, around more of a conventional medicine perspective, or maybe what you have heard before when it comes to defining what is autoimmune disease. So what is it exactly? Conventional medicine will say a lot of the terms like autoimmune disease occurs when the immune system is mistakenly attacking its own tissues. So you'll hear, I want to really iterate some of the terms that you'll hear from a conventional medicine standpoint is the words like mistake, like the body is making a mistake in doing that. And you'll also hear the term attacking its own body. Those are pretty like, ooh, man, gosh, that sounds like pretty aggressive. And while it's a simple way to kind of explain what happens, it's maybe not the full picture. And by us hearing that verbiage and hearing that lingo, it makes us think that autoimmune disease is actually maybe something it's not. And maybe our limited understanding of autoimmune disease is actually expanding now. And what we thought at one point was the immune system attacking the body and the immune system making a mistake. Maybe there's actually a very logical reason and a purpose of why the immune system is doing what it's doing. Not saying that we want to allow the immune system to continue to do what it's doing, but we need to meet it with a whole different mindset than this mistake or this kind of attacking verbiage. So what the conventional medicine model states that instead of just fighting off infections, the immune system becomes overactive and it starts to attack or damage our own internal organs or internal joints, or even sometimes affects the nervous system. And so because of this, we're often told the story that the immune system is just randomly attacking the body, that it's confused, and that we need to suppress the immune system at all costs with steroid medications, immunosuppressant medications. And so that's kind of more of our classic view, where you hear the terms immune system's making mistakes, the immune system's randomly attacking the body, the immune system is confused about self versus not self. And while it does look like it presents that way to be the case, what if that's not the true story? Or what if that's not the complete story? What if the immune system isn't attacking, but the immune system's actually trying to protect you from something? Now all of a sudden we have a whole different mindset, and it's like, wait a second. Yeah, that would make sense because that's what the immune system's designed to do. But then why is it having the reaction that it is? There's a few different working theories. Like I said, more of the conventional medicine system of using that definition with you of exactly what's happening is a little bit old school, right? I'm not going to lie. There's still lots of practitioners that kind of abide by that theory and use a lot of that lingo. But I want to present to you guys some more current and up-to-date theories. I'll still say that they're theories because the human body is always a science that we're constantly growing and evolving to know. So a lot more of our alternative perspectives and alternative theories of what's actually happening in autoimmune disease, especially when you start to consider the fact that maybe the immune system is doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. Instead of it making a mistake, or instead of it attacking the system, what if it's actually protecting us against something? What is it protecting us against? That's where these working theories come into play. So the first working theory that we think about, what exactly is autoimmune disease, there is a working theory around the toxin bucket theory is what we call it, or the overflowing bucket theory. So you have to understand that the modern world for us, we're exposed to tens of thousands of different chemicals on a daily basis, right? Pesticides, heavy metals, endocrine disruptors, and plastics, all sorts of stuff. And our body's detoxification pathways are responsible for coming into contact with that, making it into a water-soluble molecule, and then we pee, poop, or sweat it out, right? Now, what's happening though is over time, sometimes our detoxification systems, they become very overwhelmed, and some of these toxins are able to actually accumulate in certain tissues of the body, like the liver, the thyroid, even the brain, which is crazy. We're finding like microplastics in human brains, which is wild. So the immune system, this is one of the working theories, the immune system senses this burden and it's trying to eliminate these damaged or these toxin-laden cells. And it looks like an autoimmune attack, but really the body's like, I'm trying to protect you against something that I see is really overwhelming this system. So that would make a little bit more sense. It's like, oh, the immune system's recognizing some of this toxin burden that's getting trapped in certain tissues, and so it's going on the defense for our body. Yeah, it is. We may not like all of the downstream ramifications of that, we don't want the immune system to have to mount that type of attack, but it will do it if that's the means necessary. Kind of similar to the toxin overflowing bucket theory, another theory that we think about is also hidden infections within the body. The immune system isn't just randomly overactive. I truly believe that. It often ramps up, though, in response to infections that our body cannot clear out. And when I say infections, it could be like viral infections, it could be, pathogenic infections, but sometimes it's even gut imbalances or microbiome imbalances, things like small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, persistent candida infections. It's like the immune system here, guys, it's not malfunctioning. It is stuck in a constant state of battle, right? That is essentially what's going on. And so it's trying its best to eliminate these threats, but it's having a lot of collateral damage in the process. So there's working theories around toxin burden that the immune system's responding to, chronic underlying infection that the immune system's responding to. And then you think about the role here of the gut as well as the immune system when it comes to things like food sensitivities, right? Chronic exposure to foods that we're sensitive to, or chemicals in foods that our body doesn't recognize. It's like, of course, the immune system is going to mount a response to those types of things because it seems like it's foreign. The body's like, what is this? What type of food product just came into the system? I don't even recognize that as a nutrient. And so the body, of course, is going to mount an attack to those types of things as well, too. So I would say the final working theory, so we kind of think about a toxin over bucket theory. We think about a overall chronic hidden infections immune system theory. We also think about a food sensitivities theory, which leads back to things like leaky gut. And then finally, we also have to recognize the role of the nervous system in this and even some unresolved trauma. So this does get into more of our mental and emotional health as well, but chronic stress, past trauma, unresolved emotional wounds, that can definitely keep the body in a permanent state of this fight or flight, which is absolutely going to impact immune system function. So there's a lot of studies that use what's called the Adverse Childhood Experiences Questionnaire. It's called an ACE questionnaire if you're unfamiliar with it, but they're actually showing a very positive correlation between a higher ACE score and a significantly increased incidence of autoimmune patterns later in your life. So we know that this is not just about food, but this is also about underlying emotional and nervous system connection and dysregulation. So I just want to give you guys a high level look. First and foremost, when we ask the question, what is autoimmune disease? I think it's a little bit short-sighted of us to continue to just talk about autoimmune disease as the body making a mistake or the body randomly attacking its cells. I don't think that that's the case. I think the immune system is doing it in a very intentional and purposeful fashion. We just have to ask the question of why. What is it responding to? And let's go after that. It could be a mix of things. It could be a mix of chronic stress, past trauma, food sensitivities, leaky gut, chronic infection, toxin burden, right? It's like it could be a combination, any one of those things or a combination of those things. But for us to just act like, oh, the immune system is wildly out of control, we need to suppress it. The immune system's probably like, wait a second, like I'm trying to have your back here. I'm trying to protect you, but yet you're throwing in medications to just suppress me. And now I can't do my job. And meanwhile, the root cause of it is going untreated, right? Because we're just coming in and suppressing an immune system that potentially is trying to work to our advantage, but we're just coming in and artificially suppressing it so then it can't do what it's supposed to do. So a few common myths. I think we've already started to dispel these as I started to just introduce you to a whole different definition of autoimmune disease, but some of the common myths and like, to me, what actually are the truths that we should be talking about when it comes to autoimmune disease. Myth number one is that autoimmune disease is 100% genetic and there's nothing we can do about it. And I will say that genetics do tend to play a role. but they really only account for maybe 25% of the risk. The other 75% is going to be influenced by what we call epigenetic factors. What does our nutrition look like? What about our diet? What about our environment? What about gut health? What about, like I said, stress bucket overflow? Just because autoimmune patterns run in your family does not mean that you are destined to get it. And that holds true for pretty much all of our chronic disease, but specifically autoimmune patterns. You still have 75% of that power and control to turn on or turn off said genetic expression through all of these epigenetic lifestyle nutrition choices, as well as really fostering proper microbiome balance and all of that good stuff as well too. So don't buy into the myth that autoimmune disease is 100% genetic and that you just kind of feel like, oh my gosh, it's just my destiny, because that's not really what we're finding is the case. Myth number 2 of autoimmune patterns is that diet doesn't really matter and that medication is the only way to manage autoimmune disease. And this one just makes me want to light up, because I know and I've witnessed firsthand the power that food can be from even a medicinal purpose if we use it that way. So research actually shows that certain foods and certain food behavior patterns can either trigger inflammation or it can calm it down, right? The fastest way to an autoimmune flare: blood sugar dysregulation, processed foods, high preservative-based foods as well too. Things that our body just doesn't recognize, right? As like, what the heck is that? Was that made from a chemistry lab or was that grown in a garden, right? So we have seen that food can be a very powerful modulator one way or the other. And I don't think that anybody has ever successfully put their autoimmune disease into remission without a very strong nutritional component to it. Many people see some really drastic improvements by understanding what their body sees as inflammatory and removing some of those major players of some of those inflammatory triggersome based foods, and incorporating more of the nutrient-dense healing foods as well too. So do not let someone tell you, if you are diagnosed with Hashimoto's or Crohn's disease, rheumatoid arthritis, fibromyalgia, any of our autoimmune disease patterns, it's like, don't let anybody tell you that food doesn't matter, because food is a very, very major foundational piece of that. Myth number 3, autoimmune diseases are lifelong, and again, that medication is the only option. And while I will admit autoimmune conditions and patterns, they don't just appear overnight. So the likelihood of you being able to put your symptoms into complete remission overnight, probably not going to happen. But the more that we start to actually understand what is your unique root cause or root causes, now we have a door open. Now we're talking about addressing it from the root and not just suppressing the immune system, because it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. We're just asking the wrong question and we're treating the wrong thing. Instead of treating the immune system, we're acting as if the immune system's the problem when the immune system is probably the protector in this situation, is what we're finding. And so that's why we can have like all of these medical advancements and we're still seeing a 300-fold increase in autoimmune disease. So obviously the immunosuppressants aren't working in that regard, right? It's like we're missing the plot, we're missing the point. So while you focus on removing and addressing the root cause triggers, now your immune system can calm down and restore balance in the way that it should be. It's just overzealously responding to something right now that it sees as a threat. And instead of just suppressing the immune system, we need to go after that threat on behalf of our immune system. And then myth number 4 is, if your labs are normal, you don't have an autoimmune problem. I will say that when it comes to that journey of seeking an autoimmune diagnosis, again, some people go through 4 to 5 years and 4 to 5 different practitioners before they actually receive that diagnosable label. Do I feel like everybody needs to have a diagnosable label? No. But for a lot of people, it can feel very validating, and it can also be the start of your journey, right? It's not the end of the journey by getting the the label on it, that's the beginning. It's like, okay, now that I know what I'm dealing with, now I can choose, do I want to use a conventional medicine approach to this and just shut down the immune system, even if I'm not sure that the immune system's actually the problem? Or do I want to take a more alternative mindset to this and start to ask why and what? What is my immune system responding to? How do I get my immune system to calm down, not just shut it off? I'm using that as data. I'm asking my immune system, like, what are you responding to? I hear you, I hear what you're doing, and I see why you're doing it. I want to help. How can I take that burden off of you so that you can restore back to balance the way that you should, and the immune system doesn't have to be suppressed in order to achieve that full remission? So this is where a lot of times people from lab work perspective, it takes them so long to get that official diagnosis, because a lot of times your conventional lab work isn't testing for autoimmune patterns. I can't tell you any time that I have seen a more of a conventional provider run things like thyroid antibodies on a lab, or run something like an HSCRP inflammation marker, or run something like a sedimentation rate, or run something like an ANA panel. It's like they're not running those types of things, right? So even if your blood work comes back normal, but you still have a lot of debilitating chronic kind of mystery symptoms and you're not sure how they fit together, that could be kind of part of the picture. And this is where usually, like we were talking about in January with the different diagnostic tools of each of those models of healthcare, this is where more of your functional lab testing, it goes deeper into identifying more of those early warning signs and some of those hidden triggers before it becomes like full-blown disease. So we're looking at like, what's going on in the microbiome that the immune system could be responding to? What's going on in the nervous system? What's going on with toxicity burden? Those types of things aren't traditionally stuff that's covered in more of your dying to surviving model, but they're definitely conversations that come up when moving from surviving to thriving, right? It's just a different mindset because we're asking different questions. So at least for today's purpose of introducing this series around autoimmune disease, I really wanted to dive into defining autoimmune disease. What is it exactly versus like the conventional medicine, what we're conditioned to kind of think and describe autoimmune patterns as, versus more of a functional perspective. It's like, oh, that might feel different. And to start to just peel back the first layer of dispelling and maybe even questioning what we thought we knew or understood about autoimmune disease. And maybe that's been really limiting us from getting to the root cause because nobody has equipped us with a deeper level conversation until right now. So key takeaways for you guys today, just some mental reframes for you. Your immune system is likely not broken. It's likely not attacking you for no reason. It is responding to something. It is acting as the protector in this situation, not the problem. It's responding to something like, what is it? Infection? Is it toxin overburden? Is it food triggers? Is it inflammation? Is it gut dysbiosis? Any one of those things is it responding to? And instead of suppressing it, we're asking the question of, why is your immune system reacting this way? What is the root cause? That is where really we can start to dive into what that looks like to put autoimmune patterns into remission and to prevent more and more people from continuing to be diagnosed with these types of patterns and all of the chronic health diseases that come with it. So next week, we're going to be diving into how functional medicine approaches autoimmune differently. Like I said, we don't necessarily come after it with immunosuppressant and steroids. So what do we do? What does that functional medicine toolbox look like for autoimmune patterns? And that's what we're going to talk about next week. If you are personally struggling here and you, like I said, are curious about what this approach looks like, please don't hesitate to hit the link in my bio. It will take you to my website where we can schedule a consult together, or definitely send this to friends and family that you know have been impacted by autoimmune patterns and maybe hitting a little bit of a dead end in finding relief for themselves. So hopefully you enjoyed that, and we'll be back next Monday for another episode of Learn with Lo.